Y'all, not Claressa Shields literally walking into a Mother's Day moment that wasn't built for her and somehow becoming the only thing the internet wanted to talk about for the next 72 hours straight. Listen, I need you to lock in right now, because this situation didn't just shake the surface. It cracked the whole foundation. Forget the designer outfits. Forget the curated photo dumps. Forget the perfectly angled videos that flooded every timeline that weekend. The real story, the story that actually mattered, the one that made the internet go silent before it went absolutely feral, started the second people realized something was missing inside that suite. And by missing, I don't mean a person who wasn't physically there. I mean a reaction that never showed up, a blessing that never got handed out, a welcome that never left anybody's mouth. Mama Mitchell sat through all of it without giving the world a single word, not a smile caught on camera, not a caption repost, not a public hand placed on a shoulder, nothing. And that nothing somehow became the loudest sound on the entire timeline that weekend. Because once the audience started looking at the whole scene through Mama Mitchell's eyes, the conversation shifted in a way nobody could undo. Suddenly, this wasn't a feel-good Mother's Day rollout anymore. Suddenly, it wasn't even about Claressa Shields appearing beside Papoose with a smile and a designer purse. Suddenly, the internet was watching a woman attempt to slide herself into a chair at a table that was never officially set for her. And when you stop and really look at it, the way the people online were forced to look at it, you start to understand why this thing exploded so fast. So buckle up, because we are getting into every single layer of this. Every detail, every angle, every quiet moment people refuse to let slide. Because once you see what they saw, you can't unsee it. And honestly, I don't think Claressa fully understood the storm that was about to hit her until it had already swallowed the entire week. Now, let me bring you up to speed on what was actually happening before that suite even opened its doors. Claressa Shields, if you don't know, is not some random face the public just met. We are talking about one of the most decorated names in entire sport boxing. Champion belts, Olympic gold, a resume built on years of being the kind of athlete people line up to watch. So when she had a major Atlanta opportunity sitting on her calendar, a real visibility moment, the kind of professional door most people would crawl through broken glass to reach, the entire industry expected her to be there. That was the move. That was the strategy. That was the kind of decision a serious career demands. But she didn't go, or at least, she didn't fully commit to it the way everyone assumed she would. Because instead of locking herself into that Atlanta moment, she got on a plane, flew straight to New York, and walked herself into a private concert suite that had absolutely nothing to do with her career and everything to do with Papoose. And the internet caught that flight in real time. Nobody, and I mean nobody, missed it. Now here's where it gets sticky, because people online weren't reacting to the concert itself. The performance honestly became background noise the second those sweet clips hit social media. Nobody cared who was on that stage. Nobody cared about the set list. Nobody cared about the lighting. What they cared about was the why. Why was Claressa in that room? Why on this specific weekend? Why on a holiday that exists for the women who actually birthed and raised a family she was sitting beside? Why was she standing in a position that for years had belonged to somebody else? And the more people asked those questions, the harder it became to give a clean answer. Because the answers people kept arriving, it felt uncomfortable. They felt forced. They felt like watching a chess move done badly in public. And then came the detail that flipped the entire situation upside down. According to the conversation rolling across every platform, that suite was never created for Claressa Shields in the first place. That space was organized as a Mother's Day tribute, a celebration, a moment, a private gathering centered around the women in Papoose's actual family. His mother, his sisters, the women whose names sit on the family tree long before any camera ever pointed at them. The women who shaped him before fame did. So when Claressa walked in there and started recording, posting, smiling for the lens, and acting like she'd been part of that family blueprint from day one, the internet didn't just notice. The internet went into full forensic mode. Screenshots flying, frame-by-frame breakdowns, people pausing the videos to study the angles, the expressions, the seating, the body positioning, the smallest details most viewers would normally scroll right past. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, well, maybe she was invited. Maybe she was welcome. Maybe Papoose wanted her there, and that should be the end of the conversation. Hold on, though. Hold on. Because that's the exact thing I want to break down with you. Because the energy in those clips did not match a quiet, accepted welcome. Not even close. Let me put on the screen for you the way people were putting it on the screen for each other that weekend. Papoose, in clip after clip, looked like a man caught between two worlds. Look at his face. Look at his eyes. Look at the way his shoulders sat at certain points. He looked more interested in the food on his plate than the woman, recording herself directly next to him. At other points, his attention was buried so deep in his phone that the moment around him almost seemed to disappear. There were full stretches of footage where he appeared disconnected, distant, like a man performing a role, without fully agreeing to the script. And the internet, being the internet, ate that up like a Sunday meal. Let me pause right here because I want to make sure you really hear what's happening in those moments. When a man is genuinely happy beside the woman he's chosen, the camera doesn't have to coach the smile out of him. You can feel it through the screen. The shoulders soften. The eyes lift on their own. The hand finds the small of her back without thinking about it. The laugh shows up before the joke even finishes landing. That's the body of a comfortable man. That's the body of a man who has nothing performed because the truth is already comfortable enough. Now, go back and watch the sweet footage with that template in your head. Look at the shoulders. Look at the eyes. Look at where his hands go and where they don't go. Look at how often the laugh shows up versus how often a polite half smile shows up instead. That comparison alone tells the audience a story bigger than every caption that was posted that weekend. And once that comparison clicks for you, you cannot unclick it. People started saying the chemistry felt manufactured. Other people said he looked tired in a way that wasn't physical. It was emotional. Some people said he looked like a man trapped inside a press tour he never personally signed off on. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you those people are right, because I'm not in that suite. I wasn't sitting at that table. I didn't see what happened before the cameras turned on. But here's the thing. Here's the thing right here. When that many strangers, from that many different angles, come to that same conclusion at that same speed, you cannot blame the audience for the reading. You have to look at the footage. And the footage was loud. The footage was uncomfortable. The footage told a story Claressa probably didn't intend to tell. But that wasn't even the part that pushed this entire situation past the point of no return. Oh no, the breaking point came from a post. The Mother's Day tribute. Now, if you haven't been following Papoose for years, let me take you on a quick trip down memory lane, because the receipts on this man's tribute history matter. 4 years now. Papoose has dropped the same kind of Mother's Day post on a loop. Same tone, same energy, same emphasis on his mother first. His family next, the women who would walk with him since long before the spotlight ever found him. That post was a tradition, a pattern, a promise people had grown used to seeing every single second Sunday of May. And this year, when his Mother's Day post finally landed, the entire internet zoomed in on something specific. Something that, at first glance, looked small. Something that, at second glance, completely rewrote the conversation. Claressa Shields was tagged. Not tagged at the bottom. Hidden in a long list. Not tagged after the women who built him. She was tagged first. The very first name. Sitting at the top of the credit line. Like a headline. And maybe in another year, in another context, a single tag order means nothing. People tag who they tag. There's no law about it. But this wasn't another year. This wasn't another context. This was Mother's Day. The most emotionally loaded family weekend on the entire calendar. The day where the order of names becomes a statement whether you intend it to or not. And the internet read that statement loud. They read it as ranking. They read it as positioning. They read it as a public placement of Claressa Shields above women who share actual blood, actual history, actual decades of memories of the family Papoose was raised inside. Whether that was the intention or not didn't matter anymore. The audience had already made the read. And once the audience reads something out loud, the read becomes a reality. That tag order alone could have been a one-day controversy. A weekend headline at most. The kind of thing the internet chews on for 48 hours and forgets. But then Claressa added another layer to it. And that layer is where the situation tipped from gossip to something that felt much bigger. She posted her own Mother's Day content. Beautiful caption energy. Coordinated visuals. A whole presentation around celebrating the day with her mother and her sisters. Sounds wholesome on the surface, right? Until people started looking at who exactly was in those frames. Because according to the chatter spreading across every comment section, the women she referred to as her sisters weren't her sisters. They were Papoose's sisters. The same sisters connected by blood to the same family Papoose was raised in. The same sisters who already had a Mother's Day rotation happening in their own household. And that's when things got loud. Like really loud. Because the moment people decided Claressa was publicly claiming family titles she hadn't officially earned, the comment section turned into a courtroom. Side after side jumping in. People defending Remy Ma without Remy Ma even saying a word. People calling the whole rollout staged. People asking, point blank, Why Claressa was inserting herself into a family structure she had no documented ties to. No marriage, no shared child, no legal connection, no formally announced relationship, just proximity, just visibility, just photos and tags. And the rest of the internet was ready to argue about whether proximity and visibility were enough to claim a seat at a generational family table. That answer, for most people watching, was a hard no. Then the suspicion started layering itself up like bricks. Because once one part of the situation looks staged, every other part starts to look staged too. People dug back through every recent appearance. The interviews popping up out of nowhere, the matching outfit moments, the coordinated photo sessions, the clips that kept landing across multiple platforms at the same time. Suddenly, it wasn't one isolated Mother's Day moment anymore. Suddenly, it looked like a campaign, a rollout, a managed sequence, the kind of thing publicists draw on a whiteboard, the kind of thing people in the industry call a soft launch turned hard launch. And the timing, the timing, that was the part that made the room start spinning faster. Think about it from a pure strategy standpoint for a second. If you wanted to introduce a new relationship to the public on a soft, low-pressure week, you would not pick Mother's Day. You would pick a quiet Wednesday in late August. You would pick a random Thursday between major holidays. You would pick a moment when the algorithm is asleep and the audience is distracted. Because a soft launch needs cover. A soft launch needs a slow current. A soft launch needs a room to be half empty. But Mother's Day weekend is the exact opposite of that. Mother's Day weekend is a stadium. Every seat is filled. Every eye is sharp. Every nerve is tender. Every comment thread is on a hair trigger. So if a team chose that weekend on purpose, it wasn't a soft launch. It was a fireworks display. And fireworks displays are not designed to be ignored. They are designed to be witnessed, which means somebody, somewhere, wanted this scene. The only question is whether the somebody behind that decision fully calculated how the audience would react once the lights came on. And that's the part that should make any communications person nervous. Because there's a difference between visibility and approval. Visibility is easy. You can buy visibility. You can post your way into visibility. You can show up at enough events and stand close enough to the right person to manufacture visibility. But approval is something else entirely. Approval is earned in private rooms long before it ever shows up in public ones. Approval comes from a family, from the inner circle, from the people whose blessing actually changes how the audience received the announcement. And in this case, the visibility was loud, but the approval was missing. And when you launch loud visibility without quiet approval, the rollout doesn't land as a celebration. It lands as a question. And that question is exactly what the internet has been asking on a loop ever since. Because Mother's Day weekend isn't just another weekend. Mother's Day weekend is one of the highest engagement emotional holidays on the entire social media calendar. Algorithms spike. Engagement skyrockets. People are scrolling longer. Reactions are bigger. Empathy is heightened. Outrage is sharper. Whatever you post, that weekend lands with 3 times the weight of a normal Tuesday. So when a quiet relationship suddenly becomes loud during the exact weekend the entire internet is paying maximum attention to families, mothers, daughters, and legacy, the public does not read that as accidental. The public reads it as planned, choreographed, strategic. And once that read sets in, you cannot reverse it no matter how many smiling photos you drop afterward. And here's where the silence comes back into the room. Because while the rest of the internet was screaming, posting, duetting, arguing, theorizing, dragging, and defending, one person did absolutely nothing. Mama Mitchell. No statement. No quiet like. No subtle follow. No res hair. No public confirmation. No public denial. Just stillness. And that stillness, the longer it sat there, started to feel deafening. Because in family dynamics, especially in tight-knit black families with deep traditions, the matriarch's reaction is the only one that actually carries weight. The boyfriends speak. The girlfriends speak. The friends speak. The internet speaks. But until the mother speaks, nothing is official. Nothing is sealed. Nothing is real. And Mama Mitchell, in this case, refused to seal a single thing. Now I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, maybe she just doesn't post. Maybe she's a private person. Maybe she isn't on social media in a way that lends itself to public reactions. And fair. But here's the thing. People who have been following this family for years already know the patterns. They know what her usual energy looks like when she approves of something. They know what her usual energy looks like when she doesn't. And in this situation, every familiar tell was missing. No public warmth. No public acknowledgement. No reposted photo. Nothing that even hinted at a stamp of approval. And in a family that has historically moved as a unit, the absence of that stamp is not neutral. The absence is a position. The absence is a message. The absence is an answer wrapped inside silence. Meanwhile, all the way on the other side of the storm, another silence was doing its own work. Remy Ma, no drag tweets, no subliminal captions, no emotional video uploads, no interview clips popping up out of nowhere. Nothing. And honestly, that silence might have been the heaviest one in the entire situation. Because there's a kind of silence that says, I don't care. And there's a kind of silence that says, I'm not going to dignify this. And there's a kind of silence that says, I already know how this ends. The audience has spent enough years watching Remy Ma in public to know the difference. Remy Ma is not a soft-spoken figure. Remy Ma is not someone who hides from a microphone. Remy Ma is not someone who has ever lacked the vocabulary to clap back. So when she chose silence, the audience read that silence as something specific, not as defeat, not as confusion, not as absence. They read it as posture, a grown woman posture, the kind of posture that says, I don't need to chase a story when a story is busy chasing itself. Because Remy Ma's silence wasn't empty. Remy Ma's silence was full of history, full of years, full of public displays of loyalty that lived on cameras and microphones long before anybody knew who Claressa Shields was as a public figure outside of the ring, full of tattoos, full of vows, full of the kind of receipts the internet cannot delete because they've already been screenshotted, archived, and reposted 1,000,000 times over. Let me take you on another trip down memory lane, because the audience kept dragging this point into every conversation. When Papoose and Remy Ma stepped into the spotlight together, they didn't tiptoe, they walked in loud. Years of marriage, years of public affection, years of standing beside each other through moments most relationships could never survive. The image of them together became part of the cultural backdrop of an entire era. You couldn't talk about loyalty in hip-hop relationships without their names entering the conversation. So when the internet looked at Claressa Shields standing inside a Mother's Day suite, smiling for the cameras, and being tagged first on a tribute post, they didn't read it in a vacuum. They read it on top of all of that history. And history, when it comes to family and loyalty, weighs more than any weekend photo dump. Way more. That's why a chorus of voices kept repeating the same line across every platform. A social media moment cannot erase a legacy. A photo carousel cannot undo a marriage record. A clip cannot rewrite a tattoo. A tag cannot replace the wedding ring. And the more visibility Claressa picked up beside Papoose, the more the internet kept stacking that new visibility against years of older proof. The comparison wasn't fair, but the comparison wasn't going away either. Because once you step into a public position somebody else already occupies, the public is going to weigh you against that previous footprint, whether you wanted that comparison or not. Now, let me hit you with another angle, because this is where it gets even messier. The body language conversation. People online didn't just analyze Papoose for one or two clips. They studied him across multiple appearances over multiple days, like sports analysts breaking down game film. And the pattern, according to the audience, was consistent. He never looked fully engaged. He never looked fully present. He never looked like a man fully inside the moment he was being photographed inside. At some points, his energy looked dimmed. At other points, it looked obligated. There were moments where if you put two clips side by side, one from years ago with Remy and one from this current rollout with Claressa, the difference in his face alone was enough to start a whole new conversation. And those side-by-side comparisons started flooding the timeline by the day. I don't know what was actually going on inside his head. Nobody does. Nobody truly does unless he decides to speak on it himself. But I will say this. The internet has gotten ridiculously good at reading discomfort. They've gotten good at spotting forced smiles. They've gotten good at catching the half-second pause before a person leans into a hug. They've gotten good at reading shoulders, hands, eyes, breath, and the energy a person is trying to mask. And in clip after clip, that audience kept arriving at the same diagnosis. He didn't look like a man in love. He looked like a man in a campaign. And that diagnosis, fair or not, became the dominant read. Once a dominant read locks in online, it shapes every clip that comes after it. Every smile gets reinterpreted. Every glance gets retranslated. Every public appearance gets refiltered through the original suspicion. And I want to point at something else, because nobody is really talking about this part loud enough. The audience didn't just analyze Papoose in isolation. They started cross-referencing him against himself. They pulled clips from years back, from interviews where his face lit up when a certain name came up, from old footage where his entire posture changed the second a different woman walked into the room, from podcast moments where his answers about loyalty hit a depth most rappers never reach. And then they laid those old clips beside the current ones, side by side, frame against frame. And the contrast in that comparison did more damage than any single caption ever could, because the audience wasn't guessing what an engaged Papoose looked like. They had decades of receipts. They knew the baseline. And the current footage was sitting well below that baseline. Way below. So when people said he looked off, they didn't mean off in some vague way. They meant off compared to the version of himself they had been watching for over a decade. That's not opinion. That's pattern recognition. So now we got the silence of Mama Mitchell, the silence of Remy Ma, the questioned body language of Papoose, the aggressive visibility of Claressa Shields, and a Mother's Day post that placed her name above women with blood-deep history in that family. That's not gossip anymore. That's not a small story. That's a fully constructed narrative the internet is dissecting in real time. And every new clip Claressa drops, every new caption she writes, every new appearance she books, only adds more material to a case that was already being built without her permission. Now here's where the personal layer of this gets really uncomfortable for Claressa Shields. And I want you to follow me carefully because this part matters. Outside of relationship drama, Claressa is one of the biggest names in the sport of women's boxing. She is decorated. She is historic. She has built a career off of grit, training, sacrifice, discipline, and championship-level results. Her name in that sport carries serious weight. But what happens when a public storyline begins to drown out a public career? What happens when a conversation around an athlete stops being about belts and starts being about boyfriends? What happens when the search results for your name stop pulling up highlight reels and start pulling up Mother's Day controversy? That's the dangerous part. That's the part most athletes never recover from quickly, because the internet has a long memory. The internet does not forget. 5 years from now, when someone types Claressa Shields into a search bar, the algorithm will not just feed them title fights and Olympic moments. It will also feed them this: the tweet, the tags, the question captions, the silence of a mother who never publicly welcomed her in. And once those moments stitch themselves into a celebrity's permanent online footprint, no amount of new content can fully scrub them out. They become part of the digital biography. They become part of the brand whether the celebrity wants them there or not. And in a sport where image and likability impact everything from sponsorships to pay-per-view buys to crossover opportunities, that kind of permanent stain is not a small problem. It's a structural one. That's why so many people online started saying this wasn't even regular gossip anymore. This was reputation territory. This was image territory. This was the kind of situation that follows a person from interview to interview for years. Reporters will ask about it. Podcasts will dig into it. Social media will resurface it every time a new clip drops. And every time that loop runs, the audience will get pulled right back to the same image. Claressa standing inside a family suite that wasn't built for her, tagged first on a post that didn't belong to her, calling women sisters who weren't tied to her by birth, and a matriarch sitting in pure silence above the whole thing. And here's the part that hits the hardest. Even after everything that played out across that weekend, all the posts, all the clips, all the interviews, all the matching outfits, all the sweet footage, all the captions, all the tags, all the energy poured into pushing the storyline forward, one thing still remained unchanged when the dust started settling. Mama Mitchell still hadn't accepted any of it. Not a public word, not a public gesture, not even an indirect signal. The silence sat exactly where it had been sitting all weekend long. And as long as that silence keeps holding its position, the audience is going to keep reading the situation the same way. Claressa Shields is being positioned as a woman standing on the outside of a family doorway, knocking publicly, hoping the door opens, while the woman with the actual keys keeps her hand off the lock. And again, I don't say any of this to drag her. I really don't. I want to be careful with my words here, because this is somebody's real life. This is somebody's actual reputation. This is somebody's career. So I'm not in the business of throwing stones. I'm in the business of looking at patterns. And the patterns in this situation are loud. They are stacked. They are consistent. And they are pointing at one conclusion the internet keeps circling back to. This thing was rolled out faster than it was earned. This thing was made public before it was made real. This thing was packaged for an audience before it was packaged for a family. And when you flip that order, when you go to the public before you go to the people who actually shape the household, the public reacts exactly the way the internet has been reacting to Claressa Shields all weekend, with suspicion, with doubt, with analysis, with pushback. Now, let me sit you down for a real moment, because I want to share something that has been sitting on my chest while putting all of this together. We as women, we be doing this to ourselves sometimes. And I'm not pointing at Claressa specifically. I'm pointing at a pattern that shows up in all kinds of women across all kinds of relationships. We get attached to a man, and we start trying with the public version of him before we've even confirmed the private version of him. We post him before he's earned the post. We tag him before he's earned the tag. We claim his family before we've been formally claimed by his family. We do all that because somewhere inside, we believe that visibility equals security. That if the world sees us beside him, the relationship becomes harder to walk away from. That if his sisters smile in our photos, his mother will eventually have to accept us. That if we keep showing up in the frame, the door has to open eventually. But here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Public visibility does not create private acceptance. Tagging yourself in does not write you in. Standing beside the family does not stitch you into the family. The matriarch is a gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper opens a gate on her own schedule, not yours. And when the gate stays closed for that long, that publicly, that consistently, the door isn't being shy. The door is being honest. The silence isn't slow. The silence is clear. And the audience, fair or not, can hear that silence echoing across every clip the public keeps dropping. So let me bring you back to where this whole thing started, because the loop is now complete. The original question that lit the story up was a simple one. Why was Claressa Shields inside that suite at all? And after walking through every layer, every detail, every clip, every angle, the answer most of the internet has landed on is that nobody, except Claressa herself and maybe Papoose, can fully explain it. Because every other person who would normally provide context, Mama Mitchell, Papoose'S sisters, the family's inner circle, Remy Ma, has either stayed quiet or stayed away. And in a moment where so much silence is being held by so many key voices, the only loud voice left is the one telling the story Claressa once told, which means the story doesn't have a counterweight, which means the story isn't actually balanced, which means the public is filling in the gaps with their own suspicions because nobody else is filling them in with facts. And in storytelling, in real-life storytelling, when the only person narrating is the person with the most to gain from the narration, the audience always tunes in skeptical. That's not unfair. That's just how human psychology works. We listen harder when the story is too clean. We push back harder when the pictures look too curated. We get louder when the silence around the loudness gets too obvious. And right now, every single one of those signals is firing at the same time. The story is too clean. The pictures are too curated. The silence around the loudness is too obvious. And the internet, being the internet, is not going to let any of that slide. Then comes the question that's been hanging in the air this entire conversation. What happens next? Because something has to give. Stories like this don't just sit there forever. Either Mama Mitchell eventually speaks, or someone in the family inner circle offers public clarity, or Remy Ma decides she's seen enough and finally addresses it on her own terms, or Papoose breaks his own silence and officially names a relationship in plain English, or Claressa decides to stop letting the internet narrate her by reclaiming the narrative herself. One of those doors is going to open. They always do. And whichever door opens first will reshape the entire conversation overnight, because that's how internet storms work. The story is frozen until the right person taps the glass. And the second the right person taps the glass, the whole storyline accelerates again faster than the first time. And I want you to think about this. If Mama Mitchell does eventually say something, the world will not need a long speech. She will not need to drop a thread. She will not need to record a sit-down. One sentence will be enough. One photo will be enough. One reposted moment will be enough. Because in family dynamics, the matriarch's smallest acknowledgement is a louder confirmation than every paragraph anyone else could write. And the internet knows that. The internet has been waiting for it. The internet is refreshing for it. The day that confirmation arrives, if it arrives, will reshape every conversation that came before it. And the day a denial arrives, if denial is what eventually shows up, will reshape it twice as fast in the opposite direction. But until then, here's where we are. Claressa Shields is a champion in the ring, carrying a controversy outside of it that may have already eaten more of her brand bandwidth than she expected. Papoose is a public figure with a public partner of decades whose name still casts a longer shadow than the new partner appearing beside him. Remy Ma is sitting in a kind of stillness that doesn't need to scream because history is already screaming on her behalf. And Mama Mitchell is the quietest person in the entire story, yet the only person whose silence has been heard by every single person online. That is the table this story is set on, and the seats are not balanced. Now, let me leave you with this, because I think it's worth saying clearly. There's a version of this story where everything turns out fine, where Mama Mitchell eventually warms up, where the family welcomes her, and once the relationship proves itself, where the rollout that looked rushed in public turns out to have been carefully discussed in private, where Papoose's quieter expressions in those clips turn out to have been nothing more than a long week catching up with him, where Claressa's tags and captions turn out to have been heartfelt rather than strategic. That version is possible. I'm not closing the door on it. I want to be fair. I want to be honest. I want to be clear about what we do and don't know. But there is also another version of the story. The version where everything we've been watching is exactly what it looked like the first time. A relationship being launched too publicly too fast, on a weekend designed to maximize attention, in a family setting that wasn't ready for it, with a matriarch who never blessed it, in front of an audience that's been keeping receipts for years. And right now, looking at the silence stacking up from every key player in this household, that second version is the version a lot of people are leaning toward. Not because they want it to be true, but because the silence is leaning that direction first. And silence, when it's coming from the people who matter most, is the loudest commentary you will ever hear. So tell me what you think. Drop it in the comments. Tell me which version you're seeing. Tell me whether you think Mama Mitchell stays silent forever or breaks her silence in a moment that resets the entire timeline. Tell me whether you think Papoose looked exhausted in those clips or whether you think the audience is overreading him. Tell me whether you think Remy Ma's silence is acceptance, distance, or strategy. Tell me whether you think Claressa Shields will pivot back to her career and let the storyline cool, or whether you think she's going to double down and post even harder next weekend. Because the comment section every single time ends up being where the real conversation lives. And the real conversation around this one is too good to miss. If you got value from this breakdown, do me one favor. Share this with the person you've been arguing with about this story all week. Send it to your group chat. Drop it on your timeline. Because most people online are reacting to headlines, but the real story is buried underneath the headlines. And the real story is the one we just walked through together. The silence of Mama Mitchell. The history of Remy Ma. The body language of Papoose. The visibility campaign of Claressa Shields. The Mother's Day timing of all of it. That is the story. Not the suite. Not the tags. Not the tribute. The full architecture underneath it. And once you see the full architecture, you cannot unsee it. And subscribe before you scroll away, because if Mama Mitchell does break her silence, if Remy Ma decides to speak, if Papoose actually labels a relationship, or Claressa Shields drops the one post that flips the whole conversation in her favor, you do not want to be the last one to know. These stories don't stay still. They shift fast. They shift overnight. And when they shift in ways that rewrite weeks of speculation in a single sentence. I want you in the front row when that happens, not catching up, not scrolling through someone else's recap, not learning about it from a meme 3 days late. I want you locked in the second the next moment lands. Because here's what I've learned watching internet storms over the years. The moments that look like they're slowing down are usually the moments right before they explode again. The pauses are not endings. The pauses are setups. And this story has been in a pause for just long enough that the next shift is probably already loading in the background. Somebody somewhere is writing the post. Somebody somewhere is recording the clip. Somebody somewhere is deciding whether to keep holding the silence or finally release a sentence into the wild that resets everything. And when that sentence drops, you'll want a guide who already walk you through every layer underneath it. That's me. That's this channel. That's what we do here. So let's recap the whole map one more time, so it's as clean in your head. A Mother's Day suite that was never built for Claressa Shields became the suite the entire internet talked about. A tag order on a tribute post placed her ahead of women with blood-deep ties to the family. A caption referring to other women as sisters lit up an entire comment section. A career opportunity in Atlanta was reportedly skipped or sidelined in favor of a New York appearance with Papoose. A series of coordinated public outings started looking less like a relationship and more like a rollout. And through every minute of all of it, Mama Mitchell sat in the kind of silence that doesn't ask for attention but ends up commanding all of it anyway. That is the full picture. That is the architecture. And that is why this story is not going anywhere anytime soon. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves out there. Be intentional with the moments you make public. Be intentional with the people you center on the loudest weekends of the year. Be intentional with the families you step into and the silences you choose to ignore. Because the internet may forget a lot of things, but it never forgets the weekends. It never forgets the holidays. It never forgets the silences. And it definitely never forgets the silence of a mother who refuses to bless something the world is being asked to celebrate. Talk soon. Stay tuned. Stay sharp. And lock in for whatever Mama Mitchell decides to do next. Because whether she speaks or stays silent, her next move will be the move that finally tells us how the story ends. And remember, the loudest moments online almost never come from the loudest voices. They come from the quiet ones who finally decide the silence has done enough work for one season. When that moment finally lands right here on this channel, you will hear from us first, and you will hear it broken down with the same depth and precision we just used to walk you through this entire Mother's Day situation together today.